Hi, welcome everybody. Welcome back to my channel on making a browser-based game. Now, if you followed my previous videos, just a couple, we haven't really got very far, but there's been a few changes since then, or one significant change that I thought we really needed to address first before we carry on. Now, we're not going to actually do the change in this video. I've already done the change. I'm just going to explain it to you so that we don't waste too much time in all that stuff. But the change is simply the fact that Laravel has now upgraded to version 8. So if we go to documentation here, and you'll notice we're now on version 8.x. So when we first installed this game, which was a few months ago, we were on version 7. And there's not major changes, but there was enough for me to think I want to do it. So there is an upgrade process. If you search the documentation for upgrades, you will find the process for upgrading from version 7 to 8. But to be honest, because we'd only just barely started on the project, I didn't see the point. I just wanted to do it. And also, you'll remember last time I was on a Windows machine. I had a bit of an issue with that because it was a bit of an older machine. And so anyway, I'm back on the Mac, and I didn't get to keep the repo, unfortunately. So the bit of installation we did was basically lost. So what I've done is, just to bring you up to date, is I've installed a fresh version of Laravel 8. So that's dead easy to do. In fact, if you look here, it's just simply you can do it this way using the Laravel new command. So you install Laravel and then you use Laravel new like this, or you can use create project, and I did it with this. And I just called it Uteros into a folder called Uteros. Now, because I'm on the Mac, I'm using Laravel Valet, so I don't have to use IIS like I was on the Windows one. And so I did it in sort of my folders in Valet, which means now when we get to go live in a minute, if I just type in uteros.test, it'll just automatically pick up. So I installed Laravel 8. I then installed the stuff that we installed in the previous video. So you may want to see that for those things. That was like nested set for the hierarchical data structure, and Tailwind for our UI style sheet framework. And I think that was it really, and just changed a few configs as well. And I've obviously set up the database. So where's my database? There we go. So I've set up a blank database. I haven't even run the migrations yet at all. So all I did was install them things, ran npm dev, run dev just to get it all up and running, so that the files were compiled, and then we are basically sort of good to go, and we've caught up to where we were from the last video. So good. I didn't really want to spend too much time on that, so I just thought if I do an explanation now, you can go back and do that yourselves, come back to the video, and then we can just pick up where we left off. Very good. So we're now on to part 3 of making a browser-based game. Let's get started. Okay, so we need to sort of think about data structures, as in some of the basic data structures we're going to need for this game. It's all too tempting to just get stuck in with the coding and think, oh yeah, let's start building models here and there. And, sometimes I do work like that. Sometimes I like to get a model up and running, or a few models and a few data structures and the migrations, and then come back to it and address it. And inevitably that's going to happen. Don't think you're going to get it right first time. And especially because I don't even have the final idea of the game in my head to that much of the level of detail. So inevitably things are going to change. But it's probably a good idea just to at least get an idea of the kind of data modeling we're going to be using to store in the database. And possibly even the actual way that the game's going to be presented to the end user. Now, I don't know if I mentioned it in the previous videos, but I've been toying with different sort of game mechanics on how this should work. And one of them being, if you're familiar with the Travian game, you'll know that you do something and for a certain amount of time it does it, and then at the end of that time you can then do something else, and you can queue different things up and so on. It's an option. It's probably something we could do, but I've already got another game in mind that I think that might work for, that we might come back to in the future. For this one, I wanted to try something a bit different, something I haven't seen a lot of. And as I say, I may have already mentioned this. I'll have to check my previous videos, but or maybe I've mentioned it in another playlist somewhere. But it's the idea of running a script every 60 seconds. So every minute on the minute, the server runs a script and processes any changed data that's occurred since the last time the script was ran, 1 minute before. It runs the script, which will take, hopefully a few seconds tops. Make sure the server's configured to optimize for that. And then the users then can, within that 50 odd seconds, can then make changes to their setup so that by the time that it comes back round to the next script being run, it then processes those changes into the mix as well and produces an output from that. So that the game will run sort of 24 hours a day, every minute on the minute. But whether things change or not is going to be dependent on whether any individual player is playing. So, that's going to encourage people to maybe play more frequently, and it rewards those who play more. But I've also got to bear in mind that if people don't play frequently, maybe they just want to play occasionally, casually, there's not too much of a penalty for that, for not doing it. So hopefully they can just pick up where they left off, in effect, and just carry on doing what they're doing. So there's sort of a lot to think about here. No doubt your comments will sort of contribute to that, I'm sure. So please feel free to do that. And let's just get started with the data structures first of all. Now, to do that, I've just wrote in numbers here, the Mac app, just to let us visualize the data structures as just as the simple spreadsheets, just so that we can see it and we can just get a vague idea. So the first data structure we're going to be thinking of is, I sort of think, is the planets, really. So the stars, the planets and the moons and so on. They are the core of the game in the sense that they are the sort of the basis where things will happen. Anything in between is just travel time, but they are like the core of where things happen. So they're quite important. Now, I'm going to call them a body. The reason why I'm going to call that the body model is because you've got stars, you've got planets, and you've got moons. And I didn't particularly want to call it celestial objects, so or anything lengthy. But a body can cover those things in a very simple word. It is a celestial body, but we'll just call it body. I can't imagine anything else in the game being called body, so I think that's a good fit for that. So our body's going to have an ID column, and this is actually, let's just put in the ones we know. So it's going to have a name, and the important thing about the body is it's going to belong to the nested set that we installed in the previous video. Now, the nested set effectively allows us to have a relationship of an object to itself. And the way that it does that is it does it on a parent-child system. So, a body can have none or more other bodies as children, and equally a body can have a parent that's a body. So it's relating to itself. And this nested set just makes it so much easier to do it because it gives us some useful utility functions as well as the actual structure of the relationship. So that's going to give us a few other fields like parent ID and left and right, and I'm not going to put them in here because they'll be managed by the nested set. But suffice to say, if I should put a note in somewhere that this is going to be a nested set. Okay, just so that we know. So for now, we're going to come back to this in a minute, but I already know that the body is going to have a many-to-many relationship. So let's bring in the other half of that. And that is going to be, now, let me explain what this is because I'm not sure what to call it, because it can be two things. But if you remember in the game, you have raw materials. So you have things like copper, titanium, silica. And those raw materials can be built into final products. So you have derricks, orbital factory sections, uh, spaceship parts, whatever, the different things, the shuttles and so on. Now, I was sort of thinking, do I keep them in two separate tables, or is it going to be better if they're just sort of in one with like a classification of one or the other? Because elements have certain properties. For example, I think you can keep up to 50,000 in a base, whereas products, I think you can only keep 15, just literally 15, because it's a product. Um, you know, elements can be used to build other things. I don't think the products do. I think the final products can only be applied to things. I don't think you can actually use products to build more products, like, Factorio or something like that. I mean, that'd be cool, to be honest. It may even be something I'll bring in, because I do play Factorio, and I love the fact that you have that bill of materials that can build more things into more things into more things. But in the same way, I don't want to complicate the gameplay at this point, so we'll just keep it as close to the original as we can. Now the thing is, because it can be the raw materials and it can be the final products, what I'm thinking is what do we call this? Elements would be a good name, but then a derrick and an orbital factory section, and that doesn't really fall under element. Product, by definition, is the product of something else, so that doesn't fit the role of the elements. So I need to very quickly think of something to call this. I'm just going to call it resource for now. Resource? Because we do have a resources section on the original game, which is what the planet is providing. But it's also a resource that you can use in different circumstances. So let's call it resource just for now. I suppose we can always change this, but there's going to come a point where it's going to be too complex too. So we'll just call it resource for now. I suppose we can always change the front end name of it anyway if we keep it as resource in the back end. Okay, so that's going to have an ID, that's going to have a name. So we need that classification as to what it is. So we'll just call that type for now, and that can be an enum variable or something. So it's either element or product, one of the two. Let's see, what else do we know about the elements? I think that'll do for the moment. Sure, there'll be other things I want to bring in here, but these are basically the two tables that are that this many-to-many I talked about from here is going to be interacting with. So let's build that many-to-many. So my convention is just to put the two names together with the alphabetical order, so the body comes first before the resource. So that'll have an ID, obviously, that'll have a body ID, and it'll have a resource ID. Okay. So there should be lowercase, that doesn't matter. Okay. So this many-to-many table is basically saying that any given planet has as its resource that it produces any one of these elements, but it has to be a many-to-many because any planet can have any resource in the game. Earth has the first 5, and testing my memory now. Is it helium, hydrogen, helium, and not methane, hydrogen and silica? I can't remember. Anyway, so yeah, but the thing is, the moon has silica, Jupiter has hydrogen, so we have to do this as a many-to-many, and that's that's fine, no problem with that. So that gives us our body resource. Okay, I think what we'll do just now, we'll create these tables because I don't want this to be a really long video. I want to do this in bite-sized chunks. So we'll create these 3 tables as they are now. We can always come back and remigrate later when we make changes. So let's go into our command line. So we need to do PHP artisan make Moodle. Let's make Moodle. Now in Laravel 8, if you're used to 7 or before, if you wanted to put a model in a models folder or another, oh, another folder, you would have to put models here, but you don't have to do that now. So I can just do body. No, sack that, because let me just check it hasn't done that. No, it hasn't. Ooh, okay. Because what I forgot to do was put the migration in there as well. Okay. So that's the body. We also need the resource. My camera's wonky. Resource. Don't know if you can hear that washing machine in the background going 10 to the dozen. Do apologise if you can. PHP make model -m resource. Okay. And then we have body resource. Now we could give this another name. We don't have to call it body resource. That's just the convention if I was not going to give it another name. So we could call it body resource. Well, in this instance, the body resource is only referring to what the planets produce, which means it's only ever going to be the elements. So we could call this elements, but I just don't know whether that's too confusing. Elements is only what a given planet produces. Do we call that an element? Do you know what? Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Just leave that as a note there that it's the body resource combination. Let's call it element. Now, normally with a many-to-many, you don't create the model unless you're going to create based on the pivot model, not the normal model. But I just do it like this because it means I don't have to write out the whole name for the migration. So it's just easier. I can always get rid of the model now if I wish. So what I might do is get rid of the model, or you'll notice that it's based on Eloquent model. What we could do, if we go to Laravel, many-to-many, and if somewhere down here there is a, there we go, defining custom intermediate table model. So what we could either get rid of the model altogether, which means all the functionality has to exist in the body or the resource model, or we can create this pivot model. Sorry, no, that's the parent one. So this one, we could create it based on a pivot model. So you see the way they've combined the two models there, and it extends pivot. So we could do that instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that. So let's just see what it is. Database Eloquent Relations Pivot. Database Eloquent Relations Pivot. Excellent there. So that's going to be based on the pivot class. Now we might not use it. I may end up getting rid of this altogether and just not even using it as that, but it's, you never know. It could come in handy to put some functionality in here. I can always delete it later if the whole file. It doesn't matter. Depends how I code the other models. What I need to remember though is if I do use it, I need to make sure I refer to it here in the belongs to many relationship. So we'll do that now. So let's create this belongs to many, and we'll put this using in there as well. fact, first of all, let me just add the fields to the migrations. So body just had name. And also the nested set. Yeah, we need to put that in as well, actually, while we're here. So let's just bring that up. Installation. There we go. So, yeah, so we just need to add this in. As we are 5.5 and above. And we also need to add something to the model. Yeah, we don't need to drop columns, we're doing it on the original table creation. So we don't need to do that. So in the model there, so we need to use node trait. And hopefully PHP Storm will pick this up for us. So that goes in body. So I can just do node trait. Yeah, excellent. So that's picked that up. You will notice that I am now using some different tools maybe than you've seen me before. So I'm using PHP Storm. I'd use this for commercial work. So you don't have to. You can use things like VS Code, Atom, Notepad++ I've used when I was on the Windows once. But I use this commercially, so it's great. It does speed up some of the processes that I need to do, like the references and so on. Okay, so that's the node trait. Okay, so that's fine. The rest of it is just if we have existing data, which we don't, so we don't have to worry about that. So let's go to the. So that's the bodies table. We've done that. Yeah. Let's go to the resources table. And we're going to do that. Also do that. What do we call it? Was it type? What's the best way to? What's the most efficient way to do this? Should we just do it as a boolean and say if it's a element or not? Oh, that could get really confusing, couldn't it? We'll do it as a boolean, and I'll just call it planetary. And all that means is it something that a planet can produce? Is that enough? I'm thinking of the different parts of the game where the different with the resources and the products are used. So, for example, the matter transporter, it just has one big list of the resources and the products. Is there any reason? I suppose if I just put that, uh, and then put a sort. Maybe if we put a sort order on it, and then we can keep that. We can preserve that, can't we? So we do that as an integer. Yeah. So if we make sure we put a sort order on that, I think that should do. I can't think of anywhere else where that might be a problem. We'll come back to that. Okay, so that's the resources table. So the elements table is the many-to-many. So in here, what I like to do, okay, so we have a reference to the body ID, the resource ID, and then I just like to put a unique in here just to prevent. It means if I have coded it wrong and it does try to put in another record combination that already exists, it's going to error to me, and hopefully we'll pick that up before the game reaches production. Hopefully. You never know. bugs have been known to get through. Okay, so we have a body ID and a resource ID on a unique, so this can only appear once. So I think that's our migrations done, for now at least anyway. I think so. I've made the changes to the user table, so I've done username. For now that's fine. So let's go ahead and migrate, and if that works, we'll end this video here because I'll be quite happy with that. PHP artisan migrate. Let's see, and yes, we have no problems there. Let's go into the database. There we go. So we have our bodies table. So you see that it's introduced this left, right, and parent ID. So this is part of the nested set. And in the next video, we'll seed some data into this, and you'll see how that actually works if you're not familiar with it. So our elements is, we're basically saying whether a planet produces a particular resource. That's what this table is. And the other one was resources, which is, yeah, that's cool. And obviously our users as well, which we'll come back to another time. So that's it. That's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Please put comments in if you want any suggestions or if there's any observations, something you're not happy about, something you're very happy about. This game is, you know, I've got an idea in my head how I want to do this, but it really is going to be driven a lot by user opinion as well as to what they think might work, any ideas they want to introduce that I might not have thought of. Very open to that, so please, I may even set up like a permanent chat channel. If anyone's got a suggestion on where I can set up like a sort of a complete chat channel on this, that'd be great, rather than doing it video by video. But anyway, I've also set up a Bitbucket repository for this code, so you can download it at any time, and there'll be a link in the description at the end of this, somewhere in the gubbins underneath of the video. For now, thank you very much, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.